right, guys, and we are now live with Phil Jones, and this is Extra Point.
All right, guys, welcome in to Extra Point with Phil Jones. Thanks so much for being a part of our weekly podcast as we come to you live once again from Mellow Mushroom here in Valdosta. You guys probably hear the music in the background. See if we can get them to cut that down a little bit. Hopefully, you guys can hear me. We got a lot to get to today. Want to thank, in addition to our host, Mellow Mushroom, of course, want to thank our friends at Pepsi Cola, as well as Dr. Kevin Collins and the Houston Clinic, sponsors of our weekly podcast. All right, we're going to pick right up where we left off, and we do encourage, of course, all of you guys to check in with us to offer your commentary during the show today. And we're going to pick right up where we left off last week. As you see, my guest is the founder of ITG Next. He was with us last week, so welcome back, Mark Dykes. Mark, thanks so much for being back with me on the show.
Good to be here, Phil. Had a great time last week. Of course, this is always a fun time of the year. Football season is just around the corner. You can tell the hype's beginning to get a little bit bigger. People are talking about their favorite teams, favorite players. Obviously, college football, a lot of talk going on there too, as well as it's fun to see a lot of these players that were in high school last year, the kind of impact they'll make at the collegiate level, some even their first year. So glad to be back, Phil. A lot of good things going on, a lot of things to talk about.
Absolutely. So speaking of what we're talking about, last week, Mark, you and I talked about Class 6A. We talked about some of the top quarterbacks at position, and thought we would pick back up as we go forward today on Class 5A. However, before we get too far into that, we do want to talk about at least one of the contenders in Class 5A, Mark, and that is Milton, as they open up with one, of course, of the top contenders for a state title in Class 6A, and that's Buford. So what a better way to get started this afternoon talking about one of the top season openers. It's one that we have certainly devoted a lot of attention to and exposure to with a couple of different stories. I know I wrote a story. Flint did some things on it. Of course, again, talking about the opening of that brand new multi-million-dollar stadium up there in Buford. Going to be the host site, Mark, for Milton at Buford.
That'll be a big one. Milton coming off state championship. In fact, 2 back-to-back. As you mentioned, Buford Stadium, that's an incredible place. Looking forward to getting up there to see that stadium. First game in that stadium. Boy, what a game. I think it'll live up to the billing. It was a very good game last year. I do have some thoughts after when we start talking about 5A, and how kind of we see 5A shaping up, give our thoughts. I do think Buford may be a little bit too much for them this year, but I'll comment on that a little bit later as we get into the rankings of 5A, or we talk about how we think it'll shake out. But it's going to be a big game. Both teams are loaded, a lot of talent on the field, and boy, look at the momentum that Milton has.
Yeah, without a doubt. And what a way to get us started, Mark, for sure. There's a lot to talk about with that particular game. Again, we're going to talk about Class 5A as a whole. And, of course, we want to get y'all's comments. I do want to add that we've already began our preseason polls, Mark, as we've gotten started with our first 2 polls of the season. Of course, we kind of thought we would start sort of for the lowest classifications and go up. Mark, our first poll was the Class A Division 1, and then 2A and 3A private only in week 1. And then right now we've got the Class A Division 2 top 10 poll. A lot of people are talking about both of those, of course. And so we do want to encourage everybody to check those out. And eventually we'll get to Class 5A and, of course, 6A as we move forward. We're also, of course, we've come out with the top 10 offensive and defensive lines, Mark. So, again, all that's drawing a good bit of attention.
Yeah, I guess we're kind of doing it a little bit reverse order here as we know we're again going to talk about 5A today, you and I, and that poll will be coming out later. I think once we get finished today, feel like a lot of people know, kind of what our thoughts are on that classification. But again, Georgia's rich with talent in high school. Overall, I mean, obviously, California has a lot of Texas, I would say, probably, I think Georgia's like, probably maybe three, if I'm not mistaken, but they're in the top five in terms of turning out talent. And you see that talent spread out across all classifications, both public and private. I don't think that's anything new. I think, it'll be the same thing this year. That'll lead to some very good competition in Georgia this year in all classifications.
I do want to mention, and by the way, I'm going to welcome the folks who are checking out the show. I'll be mentioning you guys here in just a minute. So last week, the GHSA reclassification committee met, and not a lot of surprise. I had written a story, Mark, how I thought that the competitive balance model was pretty much dead. It is, at least for now. There were some minor tweaks that came out of reclassification committee. I had a chance to talk with Adam Lindsay, who's the athletic director from Gainesville. I had a chance to talk to Danny Redshaw, athletic director at Lowndes. They both sit on that committee. And I'm going to be publishing a story at our ITG Next platforms that from my conversation with both of those gentlemen, and give you some pretty good insight as to what took place as far as the reclassification talks. Again, nothing really earth-shattering. I can tell you they're going to a power ranking system effective with the fall of 2026, but we'll get into more of that if time permits later today. But I did want to kind of tease that, Mark, because that's something that, of course, here at ITG Next, we're always on the front burner as talking to the folks who are directly involved with that.
Well, I think when you mention competition committee and reclassification, power rankings, I mean, again, the cat's out of the bag, and it's going to be just the talent is moving around. It's going to be communities, coaches, athletic programs that can pour into their program. That's who's gonna win at the end of the day. It's a different world. It's not like it once was. I don't know really how you can. If you were to go to true power rankings, then you're going to see some lower classification teams competing with higher, and it could even be vice versa. I mean, you have some teams in very high classifications that just don't have the resources that some of the other schools have, that just don't seem to have the talent that others have. I mean, there's so many variables that go into it now. Look, I wouldn't want to be on that committee. I wouldn't want to be heading up the GHSA trying to solve that problem. I feel like you do the best you can in terms of trying to seed teams, place teams. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of players moving around, even coaches now. Look, you can't fault people for wanting to better themselves, both in terms of making more money or putting themselves in a better position to win. And I think what you're going to see is it's the same you see on the national level. You have some teams that are starting to compete against each other nationally that have a lot of resources, that get a lot of athletes. I think each state, and I think Georgia is going to end up going to that. There's going to be certain programs that are going to be competing and separate themselves, and then you'll see a few shifts, but it's going to be the communities, the programs that have the financial resources that can get behind their program, that can attract the coaches, that can sell out their stadiums. I think all that'll go into it. But yes, that's a tough situation to be in. I don't know that there's any right or wrong. You're never going to satisfy everyone with that, because I do feel like there's always a case. Well, wait a minute. We aren't necessarily on the level playing field with who we're playing against. I do think that will keep coming up.
All right, so again, we'll discuss more of that as time permits, but let's talk about who is watching the show. We mentioned Milton, and we've got big Milton fan Where did he go here? Where you at, Milton fan? I know we got T. Retta Marietta, who's, of course, goes without saying, Mark. Marietta fan is here in the house. We've got our good buddy and Thomas County Central's #1 fan, Obadiah Farley, is checking out the show. What's up, Obadiah? Evan Reese, big Roswell Hornets fan, is checking out the show. What is up, my man? Ren Estes. What's up, Phil? Ren in the house, ready for some football. Go Blue Devils. A lot of talk, a lot of excitement surrounding Tift County Blue Devils. Let me hear, if you're checking out the show, guys, where you're watching the show from, what team you're rooting for. Like Dwayne Little says Brooks County is in the house. And love to have our Brooks County Trojans. A lot of talk about Brooks County, a lot of excitement about the Brooks County Trojans. Andrew Watkins representing the Darty High Trojans. Speaking of another, we're about to talk about Milton and Buford, Mark, but T-Retta Marietta reminds us about Marietta Gainesville. Should be a treat for us all. That is going to take place right out of the gate as well. As far as a 6A, another 6A versus 5A battle. And speaking of Buford, Luke Nelson, whose son plays for Buford, he's a heck of a linebacker. Luke Nelson, a.k.a. Big Buford, is in the house. What's up, my man, Luke?
Yeah, Phil, I tell you, a lot of great games out of the gate. Love to see those different classifications playing each other. A lot of fun. I mean, a lot of times, again, some teams will say, well, I can't find anybody to play, or, hey, we don't have anything to gain by playing this particular team. Reminds me of years ago when Brooks County went into Valdosta and beat Valdosta.
Yep.
However, they were very talented. I mean, Malcolm Parrish, who was all world, just, incredible player. And then also last year, Benedictine was close to beating Buford.
Right. Had him on the ropes.
Came back. That's right. So it's always a lot of fun. I think it's good. Certainly think it's, especially in South Georgia, it's really good when we can see the different classifications play each other. I think it's good for the gate. I think it's good for a lot of talking. There's a lot of pride in South Georgia, and a lot of these teams in South Georgia, they're playing with, the kids that come up through the system. They're just not again, South Georgia is not a place where everybody's just moving to,
Yeah.
We've talked about that before. So love those classifications playing against each other. And of course, we see that at the beginning of the season.
Ranks Swanigan is representing the Gainesville Red Elephants, Mark. Ranks, what's going on, my man? We got Jim Blair representing those Colquitt County Packers. D. Smith, Mark, is checking us out, representing Northside Eagle Country. Mark, I learned you don't call them Northside Warner Robins. They're the Northside.
They don't like Warner Robins, period. Let's face it.
I found that out, yeah.
Talking about a rivalry, that's another. I can remember, I'm dating myself right now. Somebody in the chat, hey, Phil, you and I both got a few years on us, but I don't know whoever remembers Willie Reed from back in the day. Okay, and somebody help me out. I'm pretty sure he went to Warner Robins. Was it Warner Robins or Houston County?
What was his name again, Mark?
Willie Reed. He went to FSU. Willie Reed.
What position did he play?
Man, he was like a defensive back. I mean, he was all world. But the first time I went to McConnell Talbert, I went to that game, and I promise you, not only was there not a seat, you couldn't find a place to stand. I mean, I promise you, it packed in so tight, I couldn't even hardly see the field. Now, you could feel it, but couldn't hardly see the field. But anyway, that's a huge game, man. That's like Wintersville. That's like TCC Thomasville. Anyway, he's a heck of a player. But yeah, no love lost between those programs.
Odias TG says he's of course representing his Milton Eagles. And Odias, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, my man. Giving love to the Milton Eagles. Real quick, we'll see Evan Reese representing those Roswell Hornets. And I think we got everybody so far. I think we are up to date. If not, don't hold it against me, guys. Trying to get everybody in here that's checking out the show. Man, we thank y'all so much. Oh, Jerry Harrison is checking out the show, representing his Monroe area. Now, not Monroe Golden Tornadoes, but Monroe area high school. They've really come on strong. And there's Gabe Garrett. Says, well, evening, Phil, checking in from Toombs County. They're one of the teams that we really like, Mark.
Toombs County, great program. You know, and you hit on it a moment ago. You mentioned Brooks County, but how about, of course, Bowden won it, but how about Bowden and Clinch and Brooks?
Wow.
You know, that's going to be very, very competitive. I spoke with Jim Dickerson, a month ago. You know, they were in that game with Bowden. They could have easily have won that game. Obviously he'd love to play them again, but they only lost 4 players on either side of the ball. It's total 4 players in Clinch County. They got everybody coming back just about.
Which is why we got them highly ranked.
That's right. Brooks County's got a lot of people coming back. Of course, Bowden, again, hey, I'm just putting it out there. It is what it is. I think, Bowden, they do an incredible job there. Yeah. And I think, they're in a bigger area. It's a growing area. But I can tell you, nobody's moving to Homerville. I hate to say it. Homerville's a great place, right? And I don't think anybody's moving equipment. So those guys are playing with the kids that came up in that program, and they both do an outstanding job. Both those are very good, well-run programs, story programs. And, I believe Jim Dickerson's won 5 state championships with Clinch. So that speaks for itself. But a lot of
unbelievable. Unbelievable coach. Unbelievable man. I really like Jim Dickerson. He, of course, was at our banquet last year. Had a chance to talk to Coach Dickerson. And, they coached him out of retirement, Mark, and now he's back.
You know what he told me? Everybody will get a kick out of this. He only knows one thing to do. So he retired. I think he was only retired for a few years.
Yep.
And so he said it hadn't been but 2 or 3 weeks. He started substitute teaching at the school.
Oh,
and
really?
Then he started driving a bus. And he said, you know what? They asked me to come back, and so here I am. But you got to love that. But look, we'll get back to what you opened with.
Yeah.
Buford and Milton.
Yep.
So, to put that in perspective, I would say that's probably as high profile high school game, as we're going to have in the opening week. You've got Mater Dei going to St. Thomas Aquinas. Huge game. That's, California versus Florida. Milton Buford's equally a big game. I don't know that there's a bigger game in any other state. I would say this is probably the biggest interstate game of week 1, in my opinion, in terms of having some national implications as far as all the intangibles. Both, Milton has really come on. Look, Buford is an outstanding program, and they have been for many years. As I mentioned last week, look, they're great because of the people that run that program.
Right.
I've been up there and met them, talked with them. They have a lot of financial resources, so they do a great job. What are your thoughts, Phil? You want to give me a pick, or you want to talk about it a little bit here?
Well, absolutely. So, all right, let's break it down. Obviously, let's start with the quarterback situation. We've talked about Luke Nickel is not back for Milton, Mark. They've got 2 young men that came in, one from Milwaukee, one from the aforementioned St. Thomas Aquinas. And I think it's his name is Derek Smith, if I'm not mistaken. He came from St. Thomas Aquinas. Nevertheless, you've got a couple of young men that are battling it out for the starting position to replace Luke Nickel. But, Mark, regardless of who it is, it's not going to be a Luke Nickel again. But good talent there at quarterback. And then, of course, on the other side, you've got Raiola. But not Dylan Raiola. It's Dayton Raiola. Another Raiola brother who's going to be taking snaps under center, but they're both very talented. So, Mark, let's talk about who's got the edge there. If we talk about the person other than the center that touches the ball every down.
Well, there's a whole lot of different ways to look at this game. You know my feelings. I think Luke Nickel, incredible quarterback and great leader. I don't see how you can replace everything he brought to that team. Not only could he throw the ball, a very smart kid, knew what to do with the ball and make good decisions. The intangibles, he checks all those boxes. So I just don't know how you replace that. On the flip side, I would have to give the edge to Buford on that one. I just don't know how you can replace Luke Nickel, even though they have a couple of guys that are in there fighting for that position, and I'm sure they'll do a great job. And who knows, by the end of the year, they could be coming on and they could be, off the chart. That's one thing about high school. You really don't know sometimes what you got. I think stability. I always err on leadership, stability, and leadership coming back. So I think Milton lost a lot with Luke Nickel and a lot of those seniors, quite frankly.
Got a lot coming back. I tell you, Mark, it's pretty interesting. We talk about Milton, we talk about different programs. Milton has probably done as good a job as anybody of getting the most out of a position that often gets overlooked, and that's the tight end position. Tight end is normally one of those positions where you got a big old body who maybe is, and I'm talking about anybody, any player, okay? But you got a big body guy who's probably a little more agile and talented than just your standard down lineman. But he can also catch the football. He's got some pretty good hands, pretty good speed. And that's what Milton has been able to identify with their tight ends. And Mark, once again, they're going to have great tight end play. And so for a position that normally gets, maybe 3 touchdowns, more like a possession type receiver, obviously in for run blocking, but Milton gets true production out of their tight end position, and they're going to have a great tight end again this year.
Well, yeah, they had great tight ends last year, and they used their tight end. You don't see tight ends used as much at the high school level. Another thing that I'll factor into that, though, Phil, do you know how many are returning for each team? Do you know that?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. I wrote a story on this, and of course, you guys, and I've got it up now, so I'm going to kind of peek in here and look at it. But you've got both teams returning a lot. They lost a lot, but you got both teams. Look, these teams, Buford, Milton, they graduate some great players, but they also are reloading with a lot of young and up and coming talent. I'll tell you this, Mark. Both teams are going to rely pretty heavily on some freshmen and some sophomores, guys that were freshmen last year. We talked about the young man, Blow is his last name, and some of you Buford fans may can help me out here with his first name, and I'll look at it here in just a minute from my notes. But you guys can check out that story, the Milton Buford preview that I wrote a couple of months ago, that not only talks about the returning talent, also talks about that stadium. I had a chance to interview Ben Reeves, and also had a chance to talk to the athletic director over at Buford, Tony Wolf, talking about the stadium. Of course, Ben Reeves talking about his Milton football team. So a lot of excitement. And Mark, that's what builds or adds to all this excitement about that season opener. Not only do you have 2 great teams, not only are you going to have ESPN in town, but you're going to have the unveiling of this brand new, much ballyhooed and talked about 62 or whatever it is $1 million stadium. And Mark, let me ask you this: is there any way possible that Buford loses on that night, unveiling this brand new stadium?
We first of all, Nate, you skipped way over. We'll get to that in just a second. I mean, who's got the advantage at the line of scrimmage? We can be quick. We don't. Give me a few bullet points. Who do you feel has the advantage at the line of scrimmage? Buford or Milton?
I think Milton's got the advantage.
At the line of scrimmage?
Yeah.
All
Milton,
right. Yep. Who's got the advantage at the skill position?
Gosh. let me look here. All right, so at Buford's got to replace Jordan Allen, who was a big time receiver, big time kick returner. Javen Bennett, Kyle Carpenter, Sam Hartness. Those guys, they may not jump out at you, but those were big time production players. Also, running backs, Ethan Irvin, Justin Baker, got to replace them. We talked about tight ends, Hayden Bradley, Cooper Berry. Those are guys you got to replace. Offensive line, Buford. You're going to be losing Marcus Major and Brayton Burton. And defensively, Buford's linebacker core was hit hard by graduation. Jaden Perlott, who I know his daddy Kenny is a regular here on the show. He's off to Tennessee. Man, he was just one of those difference maker players. So I'm just mentioning a couple of players there already. What is that? Well over half a dozen players. Some big time names there that I'm talking about. They're going to have to be replaced. And again, that's just on Buford. That's just the few positions.
So the skill position, again, you feel like Milton has the advantage?
I do.
Okay. How about linebackers?
So in addition to, I mentioned Jaden Perlott, you're going to be missing him. Kenyon Rivera, Montrez Walker, AJ Holloway. 3 linebackers for Buford. Those are big time names. I think they're all playing now on Saturday. Going to be playing on Saturdays this year. They're all not coming back this year. The defensive backfield for Buford going to be without Devin Williams, Chris Garland, DeMarcus Knibb, and Bryce Joyner. So that's kind of why I'm giving this edge, to Milton on skill position, because, I've already mentioned again a lot of talent, Mark, that Buford's not going to be bringing back.
Yeah. So you feel like you didn't say at quarterback, but you said Milton's got the edge in the trenches. Mm-hmm. You feel like Milton's got the edge at linebacker, skill players. I'm just giving the typical, hey, you pick them, you give this. How about special teams? Who's got the edge on special teams?
I would say probably Milton. Again, I'm skimming over the story here. Let me tell you how I my ending tagline was for Buford. And of course, we know Buford refers to themselves as Glory Land. And I said, Glory Land really lost some big time talent and experience. However, and this is a big but, this is going to give several of the younger players, and I'm talking about some big time talented players that are coming up, some of this class of 28, going to give these guys a chance to shine and see what they're capable of. And that's the thing about it. Yeah, you lose that. These two teams are going to lose some talent, but man, they are so deep with their feeder systems, Mark, and developing these younger players. And for some of you Buford fans and Milton fans, chime in and let me know if you think I'm off base, if you think that I'm spot on. Let me know what you think, guys. Would love to hear some backup on this.
So we probably should start talking about 5A here shortly.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So give me your pick. Put you on the spot. Give me your pick. Buford, Milton.
I tell you, I think I'm going to go with, I think the home field, opening up the new stadium, the question mark at quarterback. Look, I'm going to go with Buford, but not by much. Maybe a late field goal wins it.
Oh, man, see, you fooled me. You were giving all the checks to Milton, and then you flip and pick Buford.
Because the home field advantage. I think that's going to account for maybe a touchdown or so.
Okay, so I think I would agree with that. I would think Buford does not want to lose in this new stadium opening night. I also think traditionally Buford has a lot of depth. They always have had a lot of depth.
Yep.
I think if you look at recruiting rankings, they are loaded up with players, as they always are. And if you're Buford, if you're not playing for a state championship, it's unfortunate to say, but that's kind of where the bar is. They just aren't happy winning a couple of rounds.
Yep.
So Yeah, I tend to agree. Although I think Coach Reeves will do everything he can and have Milton really working as they get into the season. I think he has more of a challenge in front of him, keep getting Milton, cohesive, getting that team going. I think they'll get better and better each week. And I think Buford, because of the depth they always have, I think they're going to have some of that worked out already.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think Buford will be hard to beat there.
Real quick, and Chris Bay said, "Hey guys, let's get on with it to 5A." Well, don't worry. Hey, listen.
Yeah.
Even if we have to go into a little bit of overtime, Chris, we're okay here. That's the great thing. We get to we get to call the shots here. But real quick, I'll offer these couple of additional comments, Mark, because I gave you a good bit of the Buford personnel situation. Here's what Milton loses: T.J. Lester, 4-star wide receiver, C.J. Wiley. Fellow wide out on the other side, Tristan Payne. And then I talked about those tight ends, Mark. Milton's going to lose Ethan Barber. I think he pronounces his name Barbour.
Yeah.
Ethan Barbour and Hayden Tamania. A couple of big-time tight ends. Now, they got some good ones coming up. The Carpenter kid, I believe, is one of them. But that's some big-time skill losses right there for Milton, Mark.
Well, I will say, and now obviously we're into 5A now with Milton. We can talk about Milton obviously first, since we were talking about Buford Milton. I do believe that, first thing, Coach Reeves really runs that program he runs it like a college program.
Oh yeah.
In the way that they approach things. I know I've been up and interviewed him multiple times. I've of course talked to a lot of those players that just graduated. We went up, Flint did a workout with them, got a strength and conditioning coach he's the real deal. I mean, they will be prepared. That's for sure. He will have them ready to play. Again, I'm going back to what they lost. I think it's hard to replace that. I just don't I don't think you can replace that light just off the gate with someone that's coming in and just coming there their first year being a part of the program. If there was somebody that had been playing backup for a year or two that had been in that program, I would say that would be an easier transition. I think it's a little harder at the high school level when you move around to be able to jump in and get those players ready to go. These are high school kids, although it's here to stay. It's going to be here. Kids are moving around. I think it's going to be harder for them to regroup and repeat. I think it's just a tall task to replace everybody that they lost.
Come on, for Milton?
Yes, for Milton.
Yeah.
We're talking about Milton here in 5A. Great program. That is a really good community. If you're going to live around Atlanta, that's the place to live. Of course, you better make a fortune because it costs you $1 million to get any kind of house in Milton.
Believe me, I know. I lived up there for 10 years now. Granted, that was back 20 years ago, but
and hopefully, their school is part of Fulton County. So being a part of Fulton County, they have very good facilities there.
Oh, yeah.
Their stadium's good, but their facilities are not like, say, what Gainesville's are or what TC's are, is or about to be, or even Coffee for that matter. I think when you're part of a big county like that, they have to spread the wealth. So if they're going to build an indoor for one, they got to build it for all of them. If they're going to do this for one, they got to do it for all of them. So I do think Milton will get better as the season goes on. I think they will be in the hunt for sure.
Oh, no doubt about it. Again, I want to bring everybody's attention. We're putting a lot of emphasis on this opener, Mark. As big a game as it is, remember, it's a non-region game. So even as big and an impactful game as it is, mostly for the fans and all the pomp and circumstances, but Mark, at the end of the day, it's going to be a non-region game, and of course, so it's not, I guess what I'm trying to say is it's not going to really impact them moving forward and their march to a third straight state title.
Well,
and by the way, I do like them to repeat, as I mentioned in our story you referenced earlier about who I think is going to have a chance to repeat. 2025 being the year of the repeat.
So you think they are going to? This would be a three-peat for them.
That is correct.
But you think Milton will win it again? We can go ahead and get your pick on the table.
I do.
You really?
I absolutely do. 100%. Listen, everybody's going to lose some good players. Everybody's going to restock. But I think Milton, again, they just got so much depth. I think they're going to be able to take it again. And listen, a lot of this has to do with what you mentioned earlier, Mark. Ben Reeves. He runs that program like a college program.
But he's a very good coach, and he schedules these tough games. He does that by choice to get his team ready. So the player Buford, they've been down to South Florida. They'll play down there. In fact, I had an opportunity the first, not last year, but the year before, went down there and watched them play Western, a very talented Western game. They really should have won that game. Yeah. There was some highly questionable calls there. That field, there was craters on that field. It was. They need some turf down in South Florida. All those fields need to be. It was rough. Now Western loaded up with skilled players and talent.
Yeah,
for sure. And so, but it really did amaze me how Milton they didn't let that loss.
That's right.
Down at all.
Didn't lose another game, I don't believe, Mark.
And I think that's the quality of that core group of leadership players they had. Also, Coach Reeves, they put that behind them, and boom, they reeled it off and haven't lost a game since. So
that's right.
I do think that's by design. So you think they're going to win it? All right. So you're not giving, like I would say, when we look at the teams in South Georgia, in 5A, let's face it, Region 1 5A. With Coffee and Lee and
258.
Yeah, 258. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I don't think you could count any of the South Georgia teams. I think these teams in South Georgia could get a run.
Thomas County Central.
Thomas County Central for sure. Or Lee County or Coffee.
Yep.
I tell you, I said this last week. I think once Thomas County Central finishes all their renovation and construction, building a new indoor. I mean, they're going to have first class facilities. Coach Rogers does an outstanding job.
He does.
They have a lot of talent. Hey, again, it is what it is. They're going to bring kids. People in Leon County are going to want to leave Florida to come to TCC.
Yeah,
it's just they have nicer facilities. It's a great program to be a part of. There's something brewing at Thomas County Central. There's a foundation being built that could really be something for years to come. And he's won a state championship. They're good every year. Look for them. I feel they can always make noise. And I just feel like their position geographically and from their facilities, they have the support of the community, obviously. Financially, they're getting support. So I think there's a lot of good things going on at Thomas County Central. Lee County, I don't have to tell you anything about Coach Brizia.
Yep.
You know him all too well.
Yep, absolutely.
Competitive. They have very nice facilities. I think, again, when you think about where he's located, Dougherty County and Chris County and all those areas. I mean, I think he's in a good position there. And he always just seems to have really good athletes. I think they can make a run for sure. And then I think Coffee, Coach Co does a great job there. They play very physical football. I think they can make a run. But look, we can't forget about the teams in Houston County.
You're right. You're right.
I just don't. There's a lot of good talent there. So I don't know how. I think all those teams are going to make a run. All that being said, if we're talking about this year, which we are, I think Gainesville is going to be the team that will be the biggest threat to Milton. Again, I think any of the South Georgia teams could make a run, but Gainesville's got a lot of people back. They have a lot of talent back. Had an opportunity to visit Gainesville many times, and Coach Niblett does a first-class job.
Sure.
I think, again, I personally think, there's a lot of things that could happen in 5A. I don't think there's just no clear cut to me, although for you and many people.
Yeah.
And look, I'm kind of from that old school too. Look, if a team won a state championship, hey, they ought to be the team until somebody beats them.
Absolutely.
And I do tend to agree with that. I think at the end, though, I think they lost too much leadership, too much talent. And look, let's face it, last year's team was being talked about as one of the best teams in the history of Georgia high school football.
That's right.
Right. I mean, and I can't say that I don't like, they've got to be in the conversation at least somewhere in there.
Yeah, sure.
Their offense was just, I don't know that I've ever seen a high school offense that just clicked like they did and moved the ball like they did. Don't know that I've seen that. So I'm curious to see what what the chat is saying. I know that I think we're on X and we're on Facebook and
Instagram,
not sure, but
and YouTube.
Okay.
We're on all four.
So I think that is going to. I think Milton will be tough to beat, but I think Gainesville clearly has a shot to beat them, and I also don't count the South Georgia teams out. I also think home field has a lot to do with it. Win that coin toss. So if you have to make the drive to South Georgia, okay, well, watch out if you're going to Lee County or TCC or Coffee. Milton has a very good, they have a great crowd. Of course, Gainesville's like a South Georgia team. They're north up there in Hall County. So, I know I've been rambling on here for a minute, but I will say
you have the right to do that.
Yeah, well, I'm going to say I think if I'm not mistaken, depending on what range you look at, Gainesville has the number one player in the state, top 5 in the nation. Yeah, defensive guy. He is, actually saw him in the workout room, so he's the real deal. I had an opportunity to interview their quarterback a month ago. Very intelligent guy, very articulate person, very confident. So we'll see how it plays out. It's always a lot of fun to talk about. If anybody has any opinions, let us know. Phil is going to pick Milton to repeat. I'm going to pick Gainesville to win it. Although I honestly, I'm biased. I'm a South Georgia guy, right? I grew up in Sylvester, Georgia, and it's great to see the Rams getting back on Coach Hammond. So I do feel like I'll make a prediction. If things, there's certain intangibles that you either have or don't have, or there's certain factors. Those factors being location. So are you going to get some players that can move into your program? Financially, do you have the financial resources to get these kinds of facilities? Because kids want to go to these nice facilities now. They just do. It's just a fact. And then do you have the leadership, organization, the administration? Thomas County Central in the next coming years, because of those factors, watch out. They could get something going. Again, they just happen to be in a great place geographically, where they butt up against Leon County and Tallahassee, which has a ton of talent. And the facilities that they're building are just incredible. So I think that's something to keep an eye on. I think up in Atlanta, everybody's scrambling as people move around up there. There's a lot of football teams in Atlanta, a lot of good ones in Atlanta. So if I'm a parent and I got an outstanding kid, and maybe he is at a school that I don't feel like gives him the best opportunity,
Yeah.
and I got to stay in that general area, where am I going to go? Well, hey, for lack of a better way to put it, I'm going to go visit some schools, right? And I think, but you're going to visit them up in that area. I'll pose that question to you, Phil. If you had a kid leaving the 8th grade who is all world, in the high school where you live, for whatever reason, there's just not a lot of support. The facilities aren't as good. You don't think it's run as well. You want to put your kid in an environment that simulates like a college environment. It's going to be very competitive. Where do you send your kid?
Gosh, well, now, Mark, that's a loaded question. I mean, come on now.
Yeah. Well,
listen.
I'll tell you what.
Are you talking about? Are you talking about the North Georgia area or anywhere in the state?
No, I'm talking about North Georgia. That's what I was saying.
So listen, here's the thing.
And I guess here's where I'm saying. If I live in Tallahassee, Florida, which is 30 miles from Thomasville.
Yeah.
Okay, there's not a high school there that will have the facilities that TCC has.
Oh, 100% agree with that.
Nothing like Georgia
100%.
high school football,
right?
South Georgia high school football.
Yeah.
You know what? I may send my kid up the road that 30 miles.
Yeah. Obadiah Farley agrees with you. Says send them to Thomas County Central. 100%.
There you go. But I'm saying you have a lot of other options when you're in Atlanta.
Oh, of course. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, look at it this way. All right, Josh Niblett, I love the fact that he's a man he walks the walk, talks the talk. He's a man of faith. He's a big believer. I think that's important. Okay, I know it's not everybody, but to me, it's important. And he preaches. I hate to use the word preach, but he instills those values in his young men, Mark, up there at Gainesville. To me, that checks a big box. Okay. Other than that, though, he's a big motivator. Okay. And he doesn't do a lot of cussing. Probably doesn't do any of it. That's just not his style. And I tell you, he gets out there. He walks with he runs with the team. He lifts with the team. Mark, you've seen that firsthand. I just think there's a lot of positives. Josh Niblett has got that magnetic personality. That's the best way to put it. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, you've got, you got Brian Appling. Brian Appling is probably just the opposite. And I'm not talking about as far as his beliefs or anything like that. I'm not going to get into that. But Brian Appling is more of a walk tall, talk soft, carry a big stick kind of guy. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Oh, sure. Of course. Yeah.
So two different styles there. But when you start talking about, do you want your child, I say child, do you want your kid exposed to the greatest athletes, the greatest facilities, the greatest coaches? Buford's going to be hard to beat, especially when it comes to facilities. Okay. Listen, that new stadium, kids are going to want to go and play under those lights, Mark.
Well, there's no question. I do think prior to them building the stadium, their facilities are incredible. I think Gainesville's are nice.
Yeah.
I think if we're talking football here, Thomas County Centrals are going to be incredible. I do think, obviously, it will be the nicest stadium in the state of Georgia.
No doubt.
One of the nicer in the country. It will not be as big as some of those in Texas, but there's no denying that. And again, people look at Buford and say, well, look at them. They just happen to be at the right place, the right location, and all the people started moving there, and there's a big tax base. That's how they get all the money.
Yep.
You can't expect them not to use it and improve their facilities.
Right.
School, that's just the way it is. They happen to have the money to do it. So, yeah, that'll give them the edge. I do think as far as facilities, visibility, all that. Again, you have to go back to Buford. They're the number one program in Georgia if you're ranking programs over the last 20 years. And look, not just football, but I would say overall athletic program, there's even no question. And I mean, the results speak for themselves.
Yeah, that's
Do they have? Yes, they've got financially, they've got all the resources.
Yeah.
But
So we want
that.
go ahead. Yeah. So Mark, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, I was just going to say we're getting, I know, kind of getting toward our last, I guess, quarter of the show to borrow for some football vernacular. Again, we want to thank everybody for joining us. We're not going away just yet. Just kind of wanted to give everybody the 10-minute warning, not the 2-minute warning. But again, Phil Jones with you along with Mark Dykes. We're talking Class 5A. And I do want to mention, by the way, man, there's some other good teams. How about Rome? John Reed, one of the top coaches, Mark. And when you want to talk about facilities, guys, I saw it firsthand. Do you know you can go to Rome High School and you can get a vocational degree? Never have to, you don't have to leave the school, okay? If that's what you want to learn a sort of a blue-collar trade, a skilled trade, they got everything you need at Rome High School. That whole plan was drawn out by John Reed himself, much more than just a football coach. They've also got a walk-in clinic at Rome High School. You can go, and I'm talking about anybody off the street. If you're sick, you can go to Rome High School. They got a walk-in clinic. And again, you've got nurses there. You got physician assistants, and they're teaching the kids there. So I just say all that. I think Rome gets overlooked a lot. And look, John Reed is going to have yet another great football team. We know that their season is coming to an end, back-to-back seasons, Mark, at the hands of Thomas County Central.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, and we certainly don't. There's so many good programs. I think I guess in my eyes talking about maybe who will be the last man standing.
Yeah, right.
Rome could make a run for sure. I mean, Langston Hughes, they lost their Coach Boone, but look, there's a lot of talent for whatever that goes to that school.
Right.
And so there's look, any team could make a run.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're exactly right. Rome and we should mention they're certainly in the conversation. Their facilities are unbelievable there.
Incredible. All right, so go ahead.
And I was going to say Carrollton's facilities as well. Lowndes' facilities also top notch. Colquitt has good facilities.
Yeah. Jeremy Williams says Milton versus Hoco for the state championship. Sarah Aaron Carter checking in. Appling County Pirates here. Appreciate you guys checking out the show. So listen, let me ask you this, Mark, and I want to pose this to our viewers as well. What is the common denominator that we have hit on with all of these teams? Good teams. You mentioned Lee County. You mentioned Coffee. We mentioned, Buford. We mentioned Houston County. So what's the common denominator here, guys? Quarterback. I am a big believer that, and you go as far as your quarterback will take you. We talked about Luke Nichols gone. We talked about Weston Bryant at Lee County. He's gone. Okay. So my point is that if you're not bringing back your quarterback, I think that puts you at a huge disadvantage. I think quarterback is the big question mark that is surrounding Houston County, Mark, and Lee County.
Well, yeah, I mean, the game has changed some, but I will say at the high school level, if you have a good line, a few good skill players, if you run the ball a lot, which you can still, I think, win a championship at the high school level, running the ball.
Yeah.
I think you can be successful without relying on the quarterback too much. Now, if you spread it around and, you're really going to throw it vertical all the time, then yeah, you might need to look at that. But I still think that I go back to like Jim Dickerson said, hey, feel like the game's won or lost in the trenches.
Sure.
At the end of the day. So I feel like at high school you can be successful, but yeah, it helps. Yeah, if you got a great quarterback that is vertical and you got some skill players and you have the ability to throw the ball, and you've got all of it together. But I do think it's possible to win at the high school level without having a really top level, or let me put it this way, a throwing quarterback, if you will. I think you could still run it some.
Mark, I agree with you somewhat. I think the smaller schools, and when I say smaller schools, I think you're looking at, 3A and down. I think those classification schools can certainly survive because a lot of those smaller schools, they predicate their success on the run game anyway, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, but I think from there up, Mark, I just think you mentioned it for teams that like to throw it around. I remember watching Luke Nickel, Mark, and I know you saw the same thing. Man, he could throw it, but he could also run it. I've talked about the game where they played Colquitt County 2 years ago. I think it was the first or second round of the playoffs. Luke Nickel took that game over with his feet. And that's the game that looked like Colquitt County was going to win, and Luke Nickel took that game over because he was dual threat. Colquitt County was doing a great job of defending the pass. They were shutting down the pass. So Luke Nickel just goes to his the run game, calls his own number, and really turned that whole game around single-handedly, or maybe I should say with his feet. Made a big difference there. So,
well, again, I think you're going to look to see him do big things at the next level.
No doubt.
He can throw the ball, but he's a smart kid. He's a confident, savvy kid. So, but if you use that logic, Phil, then your expectation is one of those quarterbacks that's unknown to us, unknown to Milton, is really going to be able to step up and make it.
Derek Baker. He's the young man from St. Thomas Aquinas. Okay. And you've also got Al Breton. I think his name is Corey Al Breton. He's the young man that transferred in from the Milwaukee Academy of Science. Okay. So those are your two.
Way. Wisconsin.
That's a long way for sure. You're right. Now, Evan Reese, big Roswell fan, Mark, he's reminding us that, hey, you guys are talking about 5A and you're talking about quarterback and you're not going to talk about Roswell. The Hornets, remember, Mark, they got JT Thompson, now the head coach. He was the offensive coordinator. We're just talking about Lee County. Remember, Lee County put up a ton of points this year. I think it was a record. I think they averaged over 30 points for every single game, Mark, this past year in 5A. And you've got Trey Smith now is back to run the Roswell offense. So you've got the offensive-minded JT Thompson. Remember, you guys will remember if you went to a Lee County game, JT Thompson had that fast-paced, no-huddle offense going. He's going to instill that same thing. You got a great running back. You've got a great quarterback. So Roswell fans are going to be able to see a lot of what they saw, what Lee County fans saw, Mark. Fast-paced, go offense with Trey Smith, one of the top quarterbacks in the state. He can run it. He can throw it. So, Mark, we can't forget about the Roswell Hornets.
Well, I think they're in, first of all, great hands. We had in fact, I was at Roswell and was at the school, I guess probably a month and a half ago.
Right.
A month ago, had a chance to, talk to JT. I put eyes on the kids, good-looking group. It's his first year there. I think he's going to do a really good job there. I think that program's in very good hands, and I think you can look to them. They're definitely rising, if you will. Their stock will be rising. I think he's just got to get his feet in there, get his system in place, and you might blink your eyes and all of a sudden you got some of those Atlanta players migrating to Roswell. You know what I mean? You never know where the players are going to go. Don't be surprised if Roswell's not a destination over the next several years.
Absolutely. All right, so we've talked about in Class 5A. And listen, I will maintain this stance, Mark, and to our viewers as well. I think Class 5A is the most competitive classification in the state. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I'm talking about from top to bottom.
Yeah.
Okay. Our top 10 classification that we'll be releasing very soon. Of course, again, we're going in order. We got to get through the Class A's. But you're going to be talking about a team in Class 5A when we do this top 10 that pretty much at least the top 7 or 8 teams in our top 10 could easily be considered for a state title.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was that way last year,
Yeah.
and it'll be the same this year. I think there's more teams top to bottom that could potentially win it as compared to 6A. I don't think there's quite as many teams that have the potential to win it.
Interesting. Guys, who are we leaving out in 5A? Again, such a competitive classification. Again, we've talked about some of the. What about Coffee County? I know we haven't really devoted a lot of attention, a lot of conversation to Coffee. Mike Coe, Mark, has done a well of a job over there in Douglas. He's got some really solid players coming back. You do not have Woodgate, the Woodgate kid who rushed for like over 600 yards, set the Georgia high school state record for most rushing yards in a game. That was the big playoff win that they had over. Gosh, I can't remember who the team was. But anyway,
Well, here's the thing,
Yep.
Phil.
Yep.
In some of these South Georgia towns, is they'll have a kid that's come up from in the program, right? That's been playing rec ball
yeah,
and middle school ball and get into high school, and people are not that you don't know about it.
yeah,
I do think you still see that in some of these South Georgia areas. You know, now if you're in these bigger areas, some of these kids, they're traveling, they're moving around. You know, a lot of these kids in rural South Georgia, they can't afford or don't go off on these camps and all these different types of places where, you know, people will know their name.
yeah.
And look, I always used to say it about Lowndes. I'd go talk to McPherson. I believe it's the same way today. You watch Lowndes this year, they got 3 middle schools feeding them. And I'll go to a game and there'll be 2 or 3 people. And I say, well, who was that? Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, they've been in the program, you know. And I think it'll be, you know, I think that's the beauty sometimes of South Georgia. At least, the players that are here stay and play within the system. But getting back to what you were saying about Coe,
Yeah.
that wouldn't surprise me one bit. There is a lot of athletic talent in Coffee County.
No doubt about it. When we look at the Final Four last year in 5A, you had Hughes and Coffee, you had Milton and Lee County. So that right there, let's see, Lee County, Coffee, 2 teams from from the same region.
That's right.
In 2-5A.
That's exactly right. So,
Yeah.
you know, hey, wouldn't surprise me if it didn't happen again. Phil, I guess next week we could talk a little bit about 4A.
Yeah.
I do think maybe we could touch on, I think we all know who it is, but who would be second? The greatest high school football player to come from Georgia.
Yeah.
If you go athlete, we put that out there.
Yep.
We talked about that last. I think somebody said, well, hey, you got to consider Charlie Ward, which
Sure.
be athlete. If you're talking about football, it's a no-brainer. It's got to be Herschel Walker for football. I think, although Cam Newton played at Georgia, but I think it was at Westlake, I believe. You know, talk a little bit about that. How about the overall best high school football, not athlete, but football player ever at any team from any state? That'd be a tough one.
Wow. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, who would be your top 10? Think about that.
Absolutely. So, yeah, guys, we are continuing again week by week. We're talking about, again, your top 10, not only the teams in each classification, but we really want you guys to check out our player positions. Yours truly ranking both the top 10 teams, and I'm ranking the player positions. And I do want to say this before we get out of here. And I'd really like for us to get some of this conversation in last week. As we release these classifications, Mark, we're getting some pretty good feedback. And that's what we love. We love the engagement. And over the weekend, I was pretty much trying to defend the Class A or the Class A through 3A private poll that we do. Now
Phil, your poll. That's your poll, right? You got to. Mine may be a little different. I don't know.
Well, that's why I said, yours truly puts together that poll. But I had some fans, I think they're all from Calvary Day, who sort of took issue with me. And remember now, the way we do it, Mark, Class A through 3A, that private bowl. Now these teams will be in different classifications, playing against public schools throughout the year. But we just like to rank them the same as when the playoffs come around. Follow me?
Yeah, sure.
But a lot of people are pretty upset about me that I did not. Upset with me not because of the teams being ranked, but Calvary Day. I had some fans there. Calvary Day did not like the fact that I didn't have their team. I think I ranked them 7th, and they felt like they should be 3rd place or higher. So hey, most fans grateful for their teams being ranked, but those guys, they were nice. I talked with them, asked them what what it was they didn't like about the poll. I think what I'm saying, hey, that's the worst poll I've ever seen.
Well, I mean, look,
because of the territory, though.
Full disclosure, this is all in fun.
Yeah, that's right.
Everything will be settled on the field during the 100%. Season.
Yes.
I personally, as I've always said, have so much respect for all the coaches and players at this level. I do still think it's the purest football you'll find as the high school level, and it's always just something to watch when you get very well-run high school football programs and communities behind them, and it's nothing like the Friday Night Lights.
Right.
Just so much respect for all the hard work the coaches do, and the communities that pour into these kids and these programs.
Yep.
Hey, nothing but the best to everybody. Look, there's somebody could come out of the blue that nobody knows about, right? I mean, Georgia was not ranked in 1980. Nobody knew about Herschel Walker. It was not like it is today where everything's on social media. Trust me, a Herschel Walker would not sneak up on you. But Georgia was not ranked in 1981 national championship. Right. I mean, look, that's the beauty of high school football. Although still it's not as probable as it used to be. Look, in college, that could never happen again. An unranked team could never win a national championship.
That's right.
The beauty of high school is there's a team that nobody is really talking about right now that could potentially happen. That could, you could take a team that's unknown, not being talked about, and they could win it all.
We're getting some pretty good suggestions, Mark, for the question you threw out there earlier about a conversation for one of our future shows, talking about best high school player to ever take the field. And we mentioned, of course, Herschel Walker, maybe the best one in Georgia, but getting some pretty good takes here. And I agree with my man Evan Reese from Roswell. Says Travis Hunter's got to be in the conversation, and I don't doubt that young man may be one of the best overall athletes, Mark, that we have seen in a while.
Yeah, he's got it. How about Bo Jackson?
Bo Jackson, for sure, 100%.
Yeah. All right, so listen, it's about that time. I got somebody looking at me. So,
let's be the boss.
Listen, I've enjoyed it. And the plan is I'll be back here next week.
Yeah.
And we'll just kind of keep chopping it up and, try to make it as interesting as we can.
Yep.
And maybe try to have a few other subjects we can talk about it, to liven it up a little bit.
Yep. All right, guys. So, again, we'll tackle, as Mark said, we'll continue tackling the classifications, our rankings for the classifications, as well as the rankings for our different position groups. Guys, and again, reminder before we get out of here, please go to all of our platforms, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, X/Twitter, and check out all of our position rankings, our team rankings. Please let me know what you think. You're not going to hurt my feelings. Well, maybe not, but I'll get over it. But let me know what you think about it. Let me know what you think about it. Like these gentlemen that I mentioned, the Calvary Day fans, who were very outspoken, about their beliefs and where their team should have been ranked. But by all means, like or not, comment on and share our pages, guys. We would definitely appreciate the engagement. Okay. So with that, Mark, anything you want to add before we get out of here?
Hey, look forward to doing it again next week, and see you guys then.
All right, Mark, have a great night, guys, gals. Thank y'all so much for checking out the show. I want to thank our friends here at Mellow Mushroom for being such gracious hosts for week number 2. We'll be back next week with more right here on ITG Next. Extra Point with Phil Jones, and Mark Dykes will be joining me next week as well. Big thanks to Flint Dykes for pushing all the buttons and making sure that you guys could see us and hear us tonight. Can't do the show without Flint Dykes. So we thank Flint for all his involvement and producing the show. You guys have a great week. We'll talk to you next week. Be sure, again, to check out all of our rankings and our position and player rankings at ITG Next Georgia. Until